Hello, I'm Ron Strickland. This webcast is one of a series in which I'm presenting some brief lectures and commentaries on topics from the courses I teach in literature and cultural studies. This particular installment is one of a group that I prepared for my introductory course in literary theory. And here I'll be saying some things about the philosophical concept of phenomenology. Phenomenology is a term coined by the early 20th century German philosopher Edmund Husserl. Husserl's intervention was one of several developments at that time that challenged some long-standing ways of thinking about human consciousness and perception. How we can be sure that our minds are trustworthy, how we can be sure of the validity of our perceptions of the natural world, not to mention social and cultural reality. Husserl was responding to the tradition of Cartesian Rationalism, a framework of thought established by the French philosopher René Descartes. Descartes lived at a time of radical challenges to existing philosophical, theological, political, and social frameworks of understanding. Faced with the challenge to the authority of the Catholic Church from the Protestant Reformation, Descartes set about to determine just how he could be sure of the existence of God, of the existence of himself, and of the validity of his consciousness. He stripped away all sorts of distractions, concluding that the one thing he could be sure of was doubt. If he could doubt the existence of God, he must be thinking. If he was thinking, he must exist. Therefore, his famous dictum, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Descartes' paradigm implies that the human mind can perceive reality objectively and accurately. And that's the assumption that phenomenology overturns. What we understand when we perceive something, Husserl would say, is an object or a situation as a phenomenon, something that we observe to exist or to happen, but something whose cause or explanation is in question, something that we understand only from the outside, something that we do not really understand in its essence. Cartesian rationalism takes for granted a strict separation between the thinking subject and the object that it perceives. But phenomenology sees the thinking subject and its object as two components of an experience of perception. And the subject's consciousness is affected by other factors that the subject brings to the encounter. So our emotions, our past experiences, the limitations of our awareness, all condition how we can perceive an object. Our perceptions of natural objects are not immediate, not unmediated. What we understand when we contemplate an object external to our mind is our perception of it, not the thing in itself. Our perceptions are distorted by the associations that we project onto the object. If we strip away these associations as far as possible, we may get closer to an understanding of the object in its true essence. But we never could precisely understand the object. To truly understand anything outside of our own consciousness would be to become that thing outside our consciousness itself. That would be to forfeit our own distinctive subjectivity. One would no longer be conscious of oneself. This process of stripping away all of our associations with an object from our perception of it is called the phenomenological reduction. And through this process, it is assumed that we can come closer to a true understanding, an understanding of the true essence of something external to our minds. But the process is still happening in our minds. It's a process of identifying essential qualities of the object we're perceiving. And it shares a good deal in common, I think, with Plato's concept of the forms, something I spoke of in an earlier webcast, and maybe also with the 18th century German philosopher Immanuel Kant's concept of the sublime, something I'll talk about in a later webcast. That's a problem for me in understanding the usefulness of phenomenology for literary theory, because it invites a recourse to the ideal that simply mystifies literature in its actual social function. So in the trajectory of literary theory in the 20th century, phenomenology offers an advance over the assumption that a literary text has a fixed, stable meaning. On the other hand, the insights of phenomenology invite a purely relativistic understanding of literature. The meaning of a literary text is whatever any reader thinks it is. That's unacceptable to me, because I'm interested in literature's social and political function. In my view, as soon as a collection of literary works are formed into a canon, grouped together to form a school and university curriculum in literature, we need a better understanding of what literature is and what literature does. For that, in subsequent webcasts, I'll be examining other trends in the development of literary theory throughout the 20th century. As always, if you have questions or comments, send me an email.